A quick warning, this episode contains a discussion of anxiety and addiction. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, I'm Carmen.
I'm Jackie.
And I'm Emily, also known as Douglas.
And we're your hosts. Welcome to Generation SOS On Record, a podcast that invites people to share their uncensored stories about mental health and substance use. We invite you to open your minds and your ears and allow these stories to speak louder than statistics ever could.
I never really had someone that was going through the same
that
thing.
Musicians feel deeper.
You kind of feel like you can't tell anyone, which is like the opposite of what you should do.
Saying that I was too young to have been included in a conversation, which I kind of call bullshit on.
Okay. And we are recording. Welcome, Corey, to the podcast. We are so excited to have you. My first question to you, just for some context, where are you in the world right now? Location-wise, physically, where are you sitting?
So right now I am in my home here in La Habra, California. So I'm from Southern California. I'm in my living room, just relaxing, chilling, excited to be here and ready to roll.
Let's go. That's awesome. So again, for some more picture before we get into the nitty gritty of your life and all your dirty details, can you just describe yourself a little, like who you are, where you are in your life?
Yeah, so I am 34 years old. I am an online fitness coach. I've been in the fitness industry like 10 plus years now. I just actually sold 2 gyms that I owned here in Southern California. I just sold them this year and transitioned fully into the online training space. So that's been, what I've been doing these last, I'd say 4 months or so. That's my, career. I am a father of 2, so I have 2 boys. So that's, a whole nother, challenge in itself, but it's the beauties of being a father, I guess, right? So between work, being a dad, me just trying to level up in all aspects of my life, that's where I'm at right now.
Sounds like a good place to be. Happy for you. Congrats on selling the gyms too.
Thank you.
So first of all, just to start off with your life kind of further back, how was your childhood growing into adulthood? What was your relationship to mental health that entire way through?
So I guess the way to start it would be, so growing up early, I would say elementary, going into junior high, I started to realize or started to feel a change. And what I mean by that is, mind you, at that moment, I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't know it was anxiety, but it was. So I started to notice these little things, right? These little panic attacks, constant fear that started to creep up. And so that was elementary school going into middle school. When I got into high school, it was like full-blown crippling anxiety. Now, the problem at that point was I didn't know that it was anxiety. So here I am having these panic attacks, I'm always anxious, but because I didn't put a name to it, like I didn't understand exactly what it was, I thought something was wrong with me. I thought like, dude, Corey, you're going crazy. Like, this is weird. Like, why are you so scared all the time? Why are you having these panic attacks? You're freaking out. You can't be by yourself. So it was my high school years were pretty bad. Like when I say crippling, I mean, it was like, I don't want to say I was ever to that point where I was suicidal, but I was heading that direction. I was like, wait a minute, something's wrong with me. I'm always scared, panicking. I don't know what this is. And the thing that I want to like really, I guess share is, there was like a shame behind that. There was like an embarrassment. Like I felt like if I tell anybody this, especially my parents, they're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to be like, dude, what do you mean, Corey? Like, I don't understand. What do you mean you're scared? What do you mean you're having these panics? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you need to go see a therapist or something. So I really held off for so long to share that with anyone. Till finally I just got to the point where I'm like, dude, this isn't going in the right direction. Like if I don't seek help or talk to someone about this, I don't know what's going to happen to me. Like, I really feel like I'm going to lose my mind. So I finally made the decision. I let my mom know. So I went to go see a therapist, but that was a whole nother area of problem because when I went to go see the therapist, I'm talking to him and the first thing they wanted to do was put me on medication. Like, it wasn't really like I didn't really feel there was a lot of healing talking to the therapist. It was more like, all right, dude, you're telling me your problems. Let's put you on these antidepressants. And I just didn't like that. I felt like even at that age, I'm like, intuitively, I realized like, dude, there's no way that I can just take this pill and it's gonna heal what's really going on with me. So I didn't do that. I didn't take the medication. I just kind of like put that to the side. But I continued to struggle through that. You know, I was still dealing with the anxiety. It was at an all-time high during high school, and the turning point, I guess, or the point where I started to kind of heal a little bit more was doing my research. I really started researching like my symptoms. Hey, you know, this is what I'm feeling, looking at other support groups. So that was the beginning of like my healing and like the actual understanding of myself, what I was dealing with, what I was feeling. And that led to all, you know, down the line of my whole, you know, personal development journey, you know. So
Wow.
that's a little bit to, yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. But I kind of want to break this down a little bit because I think that's very interesting, and that you're able to reflect on your childhood growing up and through, you know, adulthood, and how it wasn't really explained to you what anxiety or depression. It sounds like they just gave you medicine, but you didn't really understand what that was, right?
Right. No, exactly. It was treating the symptom, but I wasn't treating the root cause of it.
Right.
Which was really stored trauma. It was like all this trauma was stored in my body that was showing up. I was getting triggered, right? So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. There's a trigger right now. I'm feeling the physical sensations, right? The panic attack, and I'm freaking out. But yet, you know, all I'm getting is, well, here, take this pill to calm you down. But I'm like, that's not heal. You know what I mean? Like it just didn't add up to me.
Of course.
Yeah, that doesn't. I mean, to anybody, especially at a young age. Yeah. So how was your family supporting you through this process?
Oh, good question. So like I had mentioned, it was so hard to tell anybody, guys. Like, let me give you some context. So my family, they're like, you know, immigrants from Mexico. So my mom, I guess to put it in another word, like they have their own trauma that they went through, right? So essentially what happened is this: my family's from you know, Mexico. They had a real tough upbringing, like bad. Like I'm talking about poverty. You know, they went through their own trauma. Like my mom was traumatized in so many different ways. So essentially what it was is that was passed down to them from my grandparents, and they passed it down to me and my brothers. Essentially is what it was, right? Mm. So for me to have that conversation with my mom or dad was like almost non-existent. It's like, you know, even when I tried, it was almost like being dismissed by like, dude, just suck it up, get it together. Like, what do you mean? Like my mom didn't really understand what I was trying to tell her, because I was still trying to figure out the words to be like, Mom, I'm freaking out. I'm scared. You know, I'm always like, I don't want to be by myself. You know what I mean? And so to have that conversation with your parents when you know they're not going to understand, it was like just hitting a brick wall. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until later I realized, you know, going through my healing, that I was like, dude, my mom, my whole family, they got their own traumas and they never dealt with it. So how can I expect my mom or anyone else to know how to help me when they're the ones still suffering in their own way? You know what I mean? So it's tough. It was really, really tough to have that conversation. You know, thank God I did, but it just led to me seeing the therapist. Right. The real work came from myself. Like I had to research, reached out to people, you know, joined groups and mentors, you know, that actually helped me along the journey. But that was a tough conversation, and it just didn't go. It wasn't like, oh, hey, Mom, you know, this is wrong with me. Oh, you know, come here, my son, let me console you. It was like, dude, I don't know what you're trying to tell me, Corey. You know what I mean? Like, figure it out. You know?
So not having that barrier between the familial support that you probably craved as a child and yourself and your healing, do you feel like that led you to turn to other coping mechanisms that were either super healthy, super unhealthy, like kind of lacking some sort of support that we feel like we crave tends to pull us towards something else?
100%. So going just off that, because my parents were still traumatized and they had not done their healing, it was passed down to me and my brothers. So for me, going in from teenage, you know, my teenage years into adulthood, and mind you, I didn't understand that I didn't understand my habits were stemming from that. But I got heavily into alcohol. Like I would literally drink all the time. I mean, every other day I'm drinking, and it was just not because I necessarily liked the alcohol. It was like, it literally just shut down my nervous system. Like I got to just shut everything down, and I don't have to think. Like I'm literally numb, but I'd rather be numb than be so anxious all the time and like just on alert and like flight or fight mode, that I was like, you know what, this is better than feeling like that. at least I can, have some temporary relief. But that turned into like a long-term addiction where I'm like, I'm drinking all the time, and it was unhealthy. It was destroying my health, my mental health. It was putting a band-aid over an open wound essentially, where I would feel good in the moment, but then once the buzz wears off, guess what's there waiting for me? The anxiety. You know what I
Still
mean?
there.
You're
It's
still
still
there.
there.
It's still there. So, and then, even drugs, you know what I mean? I got into some drugs, not heavy, crazy use, but, smoking weed. If I was like in party mode and I'm like having a good time with people and I'm drinking, there was Coke around. So I would do some Coke. So that was just the cycle that I was in. It's like, dude, I feel uncomfortable. I'm anxious. Let me do some drugs. Let me drink some alcohol and I feel better for a moment. But then it goes back again. I feel uncomfortable. I'm anxious. Drugs out. And it was just this cycle that started to spiral out of control.
Yeah.
And I just had enough. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I need to really figure what's going on with me.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. What was the timeline of that? Like starting to drink, going through that vicious cycle, and then having that realization that you just described of needing to come out of it. What was the timeline?
Man, so I mean, the drinking started probably when I was around 18.
Mm-hmm.
And then, 21, when I'm legal and I can hit the bars and the clubs, it just really took off where I'm like drinking all the time. And just so many different things were showing up in a negative way in my life. Like I would, go drink and have like fights, I get into fights because I have these, just emotional outbursts, right? Drinking and driving. I would just feeling more depressed and feeling more like just low, low confidence, low self-esteem. I wasn't taking care of my health. I was gaining so much weight just from the drinking and the eating. So it was just a negative downward spiral. So from 18, 21, it got real bad. I want to say maybe about 6 years ago, 27, I just had enough. I said, okay, my son was, I'm sorry. That was 6, 7 years ago. My son was born 4 years ago. So that 3-year gap from 27 to about 30, I started to take my personal development more serious. So that was like a transitional phase. Like, okay, let me see what help I can get. But the real turning point was when my first son was born. I said, okay, this isn't about me anymore. Like I have a son coming into this world. What kind of example am I going to be to him? What kind of a dad am I going to be? Am I going to do what my dad did to me? Or am I going to, go the balls and like do the work and like really, figure this out. And that was it. He was definitely the motivation for me to really start to seek help and just do the healing. And that's been the most terrifying, but yet the most rewarding experience.
Wow.
Healing.
Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. And I really appreciate you essentially saying, hey, I'm going to break this generational trauma on my end, but also for your sons. And then, so that's a lot of work and recognizing everything that you just stated. So I respect that. Really, thank you for sharing that. And also, it sounds like you were using alcohol to cope with your anxiety. And it's just a cycle. And how do you cope with anxiety? I mean, roles reverse both ways. And so they are two separate battles, but they definitely build on each other. And did you cope with them, not necessarily simultaneously, because that's essentially what you're saying, but when did you notice that pattern of, oh, I'm drinking because I'm anxious or dealing with this, but when you're not drinking, anxious, when did you realize this is a coping on each other kind of thing?
Yeah, it's when I started to, so I ended up joining this, it's a brotherhood. It's called Wake Up Wealthy. And that was the real like work where I started to now really unpack things in the right way. Meaning, okay, I realized, wait a minute, a lot of my habits, it's because of my subconscious identity, right? So here I am having this software that's playing in my head that's basically dictating my actions, right? 90% of my behaviors are subconscious identity. So once I realized that, it was like an aha moment, like, holy shit, okay, this is all the programming for you that was basically given to you as a child. You didn't ask for this programming. It's just been given to you. But now you have a chance to rewire this. So that was the first thing. Okay, let me rewire my subconscious. Let me start doing that work, removing these limiting beliefs that I had. And then the next thing was actually working on the trauma, like the stored trauma in my body, like doing actual like active release, which really what's helped me so much has been fitness, like working out and training, taking care of my body and, mindfulness practices. So all this work started when I joined that brotherhood. And this was maybe like I want to say maybe, so my son's 4, maybe 3 years ago is when I started doing this work. And it's just unpacking things, changing my identity, releasing the trauma. And what I realized was, wait a minute, Corey, there's a different way to deal with this because I'm doing this work. I don't have to use alcohol as a coping mechanism anymore. Like I was gathering tools and strategies. Okay, wait a minute. You can do meditation. You can do active breath work. You could take a cold shower. You can, just mindfulness stuff. And also with the working out, these are healthy coping mechanisms that you can work through the anxiety, work through the stress and the pressure. You don't have to go to the alcohol anymore.
Yeah.
That was a game changer. That changed everything. Yeah.
And once you found that as your coping mechanism, were you more open to things like medication, SSRIs? I mean, I'm just wondering because I know when you went in and they were like, here's this crippling anxiety you have, medicate you. Like, of course you're going to reject that. That's absolutely a Band-Aid over a way deeper wound. But then once you were really healing yourself, are you open to that now?
That's a good question. Honestly, personally, I think because I've been doing this work and doing the research, I don't feel like I need it.
Okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is because I've found, obviously I have fitness, I got mindfulness practices. Like I don't really need to take a substance anymore. It's like I can literally just go inward and do the work that I've been doing, and I can alleviate the anxiety. I can alleviate, triggers that I get, right? The pressure and the stress. So I haven't really had any reason to go to medication. You know what I mean? Like when it was really bad, I guess before I was doing this work, I'd smoke some weed and it would kind of calm me down a little bit. But even then, it's like going to a substance to do some inner work. I haven't had to do that. Thank God, I've been able to like work through this with these strategies that I know. But no, I haven't really had a reason to do any medication. I mean, I'm sure there's people that need it. I mean, I know there are. But I personally haven't had to. I just been fortunate enough, to not have to do that.
So this Wake Up Wealthy, it sounds like you're unpacking as in also talking about everything that's going on mentally, physically, inside, how you're doing, but also labeling it. Do you think there was a stigma for you being a dude talking about anxiety? And do you think that played a part in sometimes you either, coping with alcohol or just not talking about it, maybe from how you were raised and your parents? But do you think that you being a dude and people are like, oh, just brush it off, had a big role?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I'm kind of glad you brought that up because that was another part of the struggle was like, talking about it, right, is one thing, but like, yes, being a guy and, again, culturally, right, culture that I'm raised in, it's like, you don't talk about stuff like that. Okay. So here I am, suffering in silence basically, and I have no one to talk to. And even if I want to talk to someone about it, who's going to listen to me? You know what I mean? And like, they're probably going to brush me up. Like you said, just suck it up, dude, be a man, drink.
Rub some dirt on it.
Right, exactly. Because even like with friends, right? Like, I would have my close friends. We would have certain talks and conversations. But even then, it's like, dude, just have another beer. Like, it's almost like brushing it off and like joking about it. But there's still some seriousness in it. But it's like, dude, just have another beer. Like, let's laugh this off, kind of a thing, right? So there was no real connecting on that level until I found these guys, right? This brotherhood. I felt that I can open up. I felt I can be transparent. I don't have to hide this. Obviously people in here are also going through their own journey. So it's like, it was just a safe place for me to share and also get the support because that was huge. It's like when you feel like you're the one fighting this by yourself, it's like an uphill battle that you feel like you're never going to get to the top of that mountain, So it definitely changed everything for me once I had this group to connect with.
Yeah, absolutely. And having it be a brotherhood, like having the only option to talk with other men, it kind of puts you in a situation where you have no option but to turn to them. And having dealt with so much suppression, probably just because, I don't know, as a man, you must feel like you can't really express it the same way other people can. I love that you found that in a brotherhood. I think that's awesome. It makes me curious too about the fitness community because I don't know what that looks like. I've stalked you on Instagram a little, to be honest, just to kind of check out your world. But I'm curious, like your life as a fitness coach, do you intertwine mental health with your fitness practices? Do you like to keep them entirely separate so that you can have one as an outlet and the other as a struggle? Like, how does that work for you?
Great question. Actually, I do, and the reason why I incorporate certain things, right? Like, because the thing is, because it's fitness related, and like I don't, what's the word? I don't want to bombard people with like, hey, you need to do some subconscious reprogramming and all that stuff, right? That's a little bit deeper down the line, but I do throw little things in there. I think for a lot of my clients, they struggle with their own stresses and triggers, right? They're like, oh, I'm so stressed out, like I feel anxious, and I'll give them little pointers, but that's still tied into fitness. I said, look, if you're feeling stressed out and anxious, go out for a nature walk, or maybe meditation, or even talking to somebody. Like I've had clients where I'm like, I recommend you probably should talk to someone about that, because this is deeper than fitness, right? But I do like to stay within my lane, just because it's like, yeah, Corey, you've done your work, which is great, and I know I'm developing, I'm growing, but I'm still within like my lane of like, you're still predominantly fitness oriented. Share these little words of wisdom or nuggets with the people that you feel is going to benefit from it. But I try not to overwhelm people, because it opens up a whole nother like conversation that they may not be ready for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It can also get a little fluffy. Like I know if I go to like a fitness class and they're like, you got it, like work on yourself, I'm like, okay, this is not really the time for that. So I get it. There's a balance.
Like, positive. I'm like,
like it's motivational, but it's also like, okay, I'm working out.
Exactly.
Yeah. So no, I like that philosophy a lot. And I'm curious to check out kind of like those workouts and how you intersperse your words of wisdom or your nuggets of wisdom with everyone.
Yeah, and it's just really like when I check in with my clients, it's just having the conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the training and the nutrition, which is very important, but it's so much more. It's like, when I talk to my clients, it's like, where are you mentally right now? Like, well, how's your day going? Like, and then they'll usually just tell me, and then I can pick things up where I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Like, if you had a bad week, they may think like, oh, it's because I missed the workout. I'm like, no, there's a reason why maybe you missed the workout, or there's a reason why you were checked out, or why you're feeling low right now. Like, because I've done the work on myself, I can kind of pray a little bit, and then I'll just share certain things that I feel is going to help them. But I do like to keep it fitness, just because like what you said, I don't want to like, start going off on a tangent on something. They're like, dude, Corey, what are you talking about?
Yeah. No, I totally understand.
And everything you mentioned, breathing work, going on walks, it sounds as if a lot of your inner work, so to say, is doing things that are in your control. Okay, I'm freaking out right now. I'm going to take some breaths or whatever. I'm going to read. I'm going to journal. So I think that's really amazing, because, sometimes it's easy to forget, okay, what can I do right now? Like, what is in my control?
Right. No, and that's a great point, because that's true. It's like our minds are wired to keep us safe, right? So it's like, if you're anxious, chances are you're thinking about something in the future that hasn't even happened yet. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's that, right? And then the other thing is going into the past, where you're feeling these, you're feeling emotions of like shame and guilt, like, oh, why did I do that? I shouldn't have done that. And so then if you're living in the past, that's also going to create these negative emotions. So the key thing was like, okay, how do I stay present and grounded? And like you just said, for me, it's just the breath work. It's like, okay, hold on, I'm freaking out. Let me just breathe.
And recognizing it.
Yeah. Exactly. And then that breath work literally calms the circuits. I'm grounded again. I can feel my feet on the floor. I'm like, okay, I'm good. You know what I mean? But that's practice. It's like exercising your muscle. And that's what I tell my clients too. If I do mention that, I'm like, listen, you didn't just go into the gym and start lifting all this weight, right? You went in there like, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to start with something. Just start at the very basic level. And then from there, you can build yourself up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one thing I've also learned about the breathing, when I was really little, I dealt with a lot of anxiety, and I was lucky enough to have a therapist when I was super young give me like a toolbox of, coping mechanisms. I mean, this was when I was young enough that like the word toolbox made me excited. So I was like, oh, I have a toolbox. But I remember learning that you can't just breathe through it when you're at your absolute worst. You have to practice that breathing in neutral moments, because it is like lifting weights. Like if you're like, all right, I'm on a stage in front of 400 people about to lift like 5,000 pounds, let's go. You can't do it. You have to practice on your own time daily, like get it kind of registered in your body. So when you're having a moment that you're desperate for breath, your body's like, I know how to do this. I practice this every day. So, like understanding how to cope in neutral moments is something that helped me a lot too. And that's why getting something in a routine, like a workout, a walk, a breathing, having it happen daily, not just on your worst days, I think is so important.
Yeah.
Right, 100%. And I think what's really been a game changer for me too, it's welcoming the resistance. Like, meaning, kind of to your point, it's like people wait till they're freaking out and they're at that level to like, oh, okay, I need to calm down, as opposed to being actively like doing the work and actually welcoming and embracing the resistance. And like when I say resistance, I mean like if you're triggered and you're stressed out, instead of like reacting and like, oh, I need to find a coping mechanism, it's like, wait a minute, this is your opportunity to get stronger. Like, just like in the weight room, right? It's like, if you're never adding more weight, well, you're never going to get strong. You're going to stay where you are. But if you're actively looking, okay, wow, that stressed me out right now. That triggered me. I'm feeling a little anxious. Let me go into like attack mode. Instead of being reactive, you get to be proactive. I'm so much more aware now of like other people's behaviors and patterns that I recognize it right off the bat now.
Yeah.
So like I can literally be like around a group of people and I can just read their body language. And I'm like, there's something going on with that guy. Like there's the energy that I'm more aware and in tune with the energy around me, that I'm able to like see things differently.
So I do kind of want to wrap up with a question that I've been thinking about a little, because we're talking to you now, two kids, an amazing career. And the kid who you described at the beginning of this conversation was scared, maybe lonely. So what would you have wanted as that young kid? What do you think could have given you a little glimmer of hope? What kind of support?
I mean, I think it's that. I think for so many kids, you need to have like a safe space. Like you need to have people and like a group around you where you can literally talk about these things. You know, I think that's really number one. It's like, look, we all have our baggage. We all have our things that we're going through. But like, if you don't feel seen or heard, you're not going to open up. You're gonna shut down. You're gonna keep it to yourself, and then it's just suffering. You're suffering alone, basically, suffering in silence, right? So I think for me, what I would have loved to have had at that moment was a support group, right? Someone that I can talk to, but also just more self-awareness, like understanding myself better, you know, and things that we aren't taught. That it's like you go to school, you know, and you learn what you're supposed to learn, but no one's teaching you how to deal with your emotions. No one's teaching you healthy coping mechanisms. No one's teaching you about your subconscious identity or, you know, how to process trauma. These are things that are not spoken of. And if that's the case, then you're left basically to fend for yourself. You know, you're like, well, and unfortunately, so many people, they check out. You know, I mean, suicide rate is like at an all-time high. There's school shootings. People are ODing left and right. There's a reason for that. That's not by accident. It's because these kids or young adults, people in general, they don't have an outlet. And so they're literally going to the extreme with these drugs, alcohol, you know, all this other stuff that, you know, they're destroying themselves, literally, you know what I mean? So it's definitely having a support system, having someone you can talk to, but also the self-awareness and giving yourself that grace of like, dude, I am worth this. Like, I am worth the care. I am worth the healing. Like, I can do this, you know? And if you have that type of perspective and then the right support, you can heal. Anybody can heal. I believe that.
Totally. I love everything that you just said. And you've gained more social and emotional intelligence, which is so important to survive in this world of negativity sometimes. Yeah, you have an amazing story, Corey, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing all of this with us. And I love the growth, and you should be so proud of yourself. And I think it's great that we got to meet today, and I just appreciate you being so honest with us, truly.
Thank you, guys. No, I appreciate you guys for taking the time. I'm excited, man. This was great. If I felt like, you know, therapeutic too, a little bit, you know.
A little therapy.
Wow. Yeah, right.
For more conversations like these or to find a support system near you, go to generationsos.org.